Now, it's a very unpredictable time, right? Many people are dealing with layoffs in the tech industry, in the finance industry. You never know what could happen next and could drastically impact your ability to earn an income. Now, in this example, we have someone who's been recently fired from the finance industry, and it came as a bit of a shock. But I'm going to tell you what we can learn from this and how you can look out for the signs if you're going to be dealing with a layoff, and how to deal with it just being fired and looking for your next opportunity.
So what happened that day? So I got impacted on a Thursday, and I for some reason had a feeling that I was gonna be laid off soon. There wasn't any type of news or anything I knew of beforehand. It was just a feeling of disconnection that I felt from my team for almost 6 months since the last layoff that happened in May. And in the last one, that was the first time I experienced a layoff that directly impacted my team and also impacted multiple people that I knew and cared about. And although I wasn't the one that was impacted, I still felt really bad, and it was really hard for me because you felt like you lost people whom you got to see every day, got to know really well, and got to know what's going on in their personal life. But when I got impacted that day,
You could sense it, right? And normally you can sense if something's off in the office, right? People start treating you differently. Management might look at you differently. You'll sense a lack of security in your job before you are fired. And that's typically a vibe in the air that you can pick up on. And we all are humans who have survival instincts, so we can typically pick up on something that doesn't feel quite right. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if there had been a round of layoffs earlier, and you mentioned 6 months before there had been a round of layoffs, typically layoffs don't just occur in isolation. They have several rounds of layoffs, right? So they might lay off people 1 week, let's just say at the start of January, and then they'll do like a second review, and then maybe end of February, start of March, they might have a second layoff. Or in his case, they did layoff 6 months ago, and then, there was 6 months between the layoffs essentially. So typically, if there are layoffs starting at your company, it's worthwhile refreshing your CV and looking for your next opportunity. Don't just think, oh, they've laid off some people, they'll keep the rest of us, we're okay, we're in the clear. It doesn't really work like that. You have no real job security in this current era. So always be looking for another job if you are hearing even rumors about layoffs. And he mentioned the disconnect, which I said is a vibe in the air. And and also from experience, you should be able to kind of pick up on these little changes. And he's at the more junior level, so maybe he doesn't. But let's listen to the next section, because it really shows you how HR and management are really cold-hearted. They might be all fake nice with you throughout your time working there, but the moment they see you as disposable, all of a sudden the vibe changes, and they see you as just a stranger who needs to be kicked out the office.
Into the office. I saw a few people by the coffee machine, so I chatted with them for a few minutes. And then I saw my MD, who, by the way, was going to lay me off in the next 10 minutes, walking down the hall. So I said hi to him. Didn't get much response from him, which I thought was kind of weird in the moment, but didn't think too much about it. And then literally a few minutes later, I would log in and see that 30 minutes ago, he had messaged me asking me whether I'd be coming into the office that day and whether I could meet him in a particular room on a different floor, which really only meant one thing. Now, for those who might not know, when they lay you off, they actually bring you to a different floor altogether, so they could basically escort you out after delivering the hard news. And then HR will come and retrieve your stuff from your locker and your desk, so there isn't any type of outburst or any drama like that that might happen after someone gets laid off and feels a lot of emotions. First thing I do after seeing this message is ask my manager if she knew what was going on. And then when I showed her the message, she was shocked, because I think she knew what was going to happen too, so she felt really bad, wished me luck, and hoped that everything was okay. So she knew what was going on, but at the same time, she was hoping it was something else. So basically, I headed towards the elevators, and I was freaking out on my way over because of the shock and disbelief that I was feeling still.
So the first thing is, right, HR and the manager, all of a sudden they want to get rid of you. They're kind of cold-hearted. They're just like, okay, where are you? Can I see you in a meeting on another floor? We're going to speak with you and get rid of you. I've dealt with situations like that, right? And typically can be quite contentious. They don't want you going back to your desk or collecting your stuff. HR will collect that. Typically, if they're courteous, they might say, okay, we're going to fire you in this meeting. We're going to escort you back to your desk. You'll pick up your things and leave, right? So they get rid of you like you're an intruder, even if you've been working there for years, over a decade. I've seen these type of things. It's quite brutal, the way they see you as disposable, and they just basically quickly leave before we make you leave. The other thing is, the funny thing is, he mentioned his direct line manager said they weren't aware. That's never the case. Your direct line manager always knows. Even they're just playing dumb because they don't want to take personal responsibility. And as I say, one of the corporate rules is never take personal accountability. Always got to be playing like, oh, I didn't know. Is that really the case? That's not what I thought. Not taking personal accountability and feigning ignorance is very common in the corporate environment. And, you should play by that rule book too in the future if you need to. And the fact is, direct line manager pretend they didn't know. They just didn't want him to notice that obvious fact. And typically you can sense it. Like I say, this guy's a bit younger, he's a bit more junior, he probably can't sense it himself. So, that's something worthwhile to bear in mind. If you are dealing with a layoff, everybody knows except you. HR, your direct line manager, their manager, maybe some other managers at that level, maybe even some more mid-level senior team people in your team who are going to understand the team needs to be restructured, so other people might be doing your role when you're leaving. Everyone pretty much knows apart from you.
And when I went over to that room, there was that same MD and then someone from HR. And then that MD basically mentioned that there's been a reduction in the workforce, that my position had been impacted, and that I no longer work at the firm. And pretty much left the room right after that without showing any other emotions or any signs of feeling bad for doing this. But I guess that's part of doing business. And then the HR person walked me through the severance package, and then I pretty much packed my locker and then headed downstairs after that. And then I called my fiance and my mom and told them what had happened.
So as you can see, right, it becomes all sorts of mechanical. Once they want to get rid of you, HR's just like, this is the severance package, no one cares, can you get out of here, right? And what you need to note here is that the company just mentioned they were having a downsizing effectively. It was nothing to do with his performance, it was not necessarily his fault. And that's something you should bear in mind. If you're dealing with a layoff, don't take it so personally. Particularly, I would say, all of us who work hard and want to do a good job, but particularly, I think, just speaking from my experience and maybe his experience, is when you come from an Asian background, a lot of us are thinking, oh, if you work hard, like, and you study hard at school, you'll get good grades, which is true. But if you work hard in the work environment, it doesn't necessarily translate to higher pay or more job security or bigger bonuses, things like that. A lot of it is based on likability factors in the office. How likable are you when it comes to co-workers? And it's quite important not to take these things personally, because if there's a recession and they cut your team in half, which I've dealt with in previous experience, you've worked at some of these companies. I won't go into the specific instances and link them to the company names, but I remember dealing with an instance where they cut the team in half, essentially let go of 50% of people, and I was one of those people. And they let go of people of all different levels, and it's easy to take it personally, like, oh, why did they let go of me? And I knew at the time I wasn't one of the manager's favorites, and that's fine. And I realized I was trying to distinguish between who they laid off and who they kept, and it really was a distinction between how much our manager liked them, and I could just sense it, right? You could just sense, oh, these certain people are in the good books of the manager 3 levels above, and certain other people aren't. And that probably impacted this guy too, which he can't really, you can't be in control of that necessarily.
Really grateful that they were very supportive and comforted me, telling me that everything will be okay and that we'll go through this together. It was crazy because my fiance and I had just bought a home within the last year. We also had a wedding coming up, so I was going through a lot of emotions. I was angry, I was annoyed, I was frustrated, and I think for me, I was also feeling the excitement because I didn't know what my future might look like. And I knew that I needed to change or make a change given how different the work environment was since the last layoff. And then I was back to being nervous, and then the cycle of ups and downs went on. And after that, I felt a little sense of calmness from knowing that I actually wanted to pursue a different route with social.
So one thing I want to mention here is this system is so cold and heartless, right? There's no sense of security, I would say, for many millennials and definitely Gen Z or Zoomers, however you want to refer to them, which this guy would be in, right? If you're in your early 20s, you're classified as Gen Z. If you're in your 30s, roughly, you're a millennial, right? Now, people can't have enough stability for several years to buy a house and get married. And this is the kind of common pattern I mentioned in many of my videos. You might know a lot of people are getting married and buying houses, but it's like they're in massive mortgage debt. They have these massive overpriced weddings and things like that. So it's very difficult to plan ahead for your life, to major normal life decisions. You're getting married, buying a house, having kids, when you're like, I could be working somewhere and the economy gets shaky and I lose my job and I'm out of work for 3, 6, 12 months, And after dealing with a layoff, in my case, in previous years, and in his case, you have to really rethink these things through. You need to manage your emotions. You could get quite annoyed at first, but then you have to stay quite calm. And you really need to think carefully about your next move. Lots of people just dive into a similar job, and they're just as unhappy, and it's just as unstable. You need to think carefully about, okay, if I pick another job, how stable is it? Should I go for a job with high pay, with long work hours, or maybe a job with medium pay and better work hours, like solid 9 to 5, which is kind of rare in finance compared to most corporate jobs in finance, which are 8 to 6 or longer. And if you get more stable work hours, then maybe you could spend your time outside of work, focus on other income sources so you can diversify your income and be less stressed or if you're dealing with an unstable job market, at least you've got two income sources. And also you need to like do things like contact recruiters. But I think you should take a few days break to really reflect, because you will get a severance package which will cover 3 to 6 months pay depending on the particular arrangement, and then you'll be able to kind of reassess, like, what should I do next. Contact recruiters, update your LinkedIn, update your CV, start looking for the next job. But this pressure to succeed quickly is really weighing on people's head, particularly when they see inflation, they see the other social dysfunction, the economy, the political situation. Everyone's like scrambling for some sense of stability and security, right? So there's pressure to succeed quickly, but I think you should take some time to reflect by yourself, not necessarily with family members who can be supportive at times, but other times they could put pressure on you. Like, you need to get your act together and get the next job. And something you need to realize is that having a better performance wouldn't change things, because it's easy to judge yourself and blame yourself. In many cases, I don't know his performance personally, but I've seen it many times. Like I say, you can do a good job and still lose your job, given you're not one of the favorites in the office. So just kind of be detached. That's one thing I realized switching from, I went to LSE, which is a good university. And in the academic sphere, you can study hard and get good grades. But there's no correlation between, like, say, working hard and getting a solid, high-paying job over the long term. You could be a good guy and do the right thing and still get screwed over. So you have to be detached from your work, right? You have to be detached. You have to see it as just like a transaction. I'm working for pay. I'm trading off my time and effort for money, and it's just like that. And it could go at any time. That's just how you've got to see things now. That's very important to consider when you are dealing with a layoff.
No such thing as company loyalty anymore, as much as someone may want to believe there is. And companies will not be as loyal even if you give your heart and soul to the firm. So what does that mean? That means make sure you take your time off, take care of your mental health, visit your family, attend your kids' activity program, go on vacation, and ultimately don't let your work and work schedule dictate how you live your life.
Now, he's very honest here, right? And as I say, I've had similar experiences, and I've learned that lesson the hard way, sacrificing a lot of time and energy to basically focus on my career, right? Focus on building, a solid career essentially. But you're dealing with, as I say, toxic managers, backstabbing co-workers. You're dealing with a lack of job stability. You might not be getting pay rises in line with the rate of inflation, particularly now. There's no company loyalty. So like, why are you being so loyal to the company? You should focus on all aspects of your life. You should see your life as like a 360 thing and develop yourself in a 360 way. Being well-rounded, focus on your health, wealth, and freedom. And even within your health, your physical health, your mental health, focus on your wealth, not in terms of just a high-paying job, but are you saving and investing enough for long-term financial freedom? And focus on your freedom, whether that's spending time with your family, your relationships, maybe focus on whether that's alternative income sources, which is linked to wealth, or maybe your freedom in the sense of where you live, and it's maybe a location where the government isn't cracking down on your freedom, as we've seen in recent years. And you also need to plan ahead for potentially long-term unemployment. I know that sounds very uncomfortable and daunting, but you have other skills you could develop, other ways of making money, maybe a side hustle, things like that, that can help you deal with a layoff type of situation. And then also have good hobbies that are healthy and that are low cost, going to the gym. Also stay quite calm. I have dealt with this, and through my career coaching service, which is here, I do offer coaching around this, because I've dealt with this personally, and I know how you can be racked with anxiety, particularly when there are job losses in your industry, in your company. You're dealing with instability in terms of feeling like whether your job's secure in the work environment. So you need to kind of look through these things quite carefully, and that's something I help advise my clients with. So if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to me. The link is in the description. I'll be happy to help with you directly. If you're dealing with any layoffs, or if you had dealt with any layoffs, leave a comment below. Let us know about your experience. How did you deal with the experience of a layoff? One good thing about a layoff I have found is that you do get that kind of time to relax and recover and reassess your life, which is very important, because as an adult, it's not like when you're kids and you get a long summer break from school. The only time you get a long several months break, unless you take an official career break, is between one job and the next if you're dealing with a layoff. So always try to maximize that and enjoy that moment to really figure out the next step in your life. Thanks for listening. There is 2 videos on your screen right now that is highly recommended, and I'll see you in the next video.